A while back, I made this video, and in this video I stated the video type I enjoy creating the most are the ones where I show me creating a project. And the type of videos I mean can be seen as an example right here. And by far the most requested video type is where people are telling me to create a game. So yeah, I'm gonna start doing that I guess. But each game that I'm gonna make is gonna have something in common, and this thing is called the game engine or game framework or whatever you want to call it. And so, rather than creating this and having to re-explain it for every creating game video I make, I thought it would be better to do it just once in this video. It's not exactly going to be the most featureful or the most fancy thing in the world, but it will save a lot of time in the videos to come. So anyways, let's begin. To begin, I created probably the most important parts of any game engine or framework, the main game loop and the game state system. The main game loop is what actually controls the game. It's basically an infinite loop that only ends when the game is closed. And this loop basically has three main functions: handling player input, updating the game, and rendering. But depending on what you are doing, these functions can mean different things, and this is where the game state system comes in. With a game state system, I can neatly organise the code of different stages of the game into their own classes. The different game state classes inherit from the base game state class and implement the virtual functions, and then the main game loop simply calls these functions in the currently active game state over and over again polymorphically until the game is closed. For example, imagine a main menu. It can be considered a game state, and in the update functions it would check the input on the buttons. For the update function it would change the background, and for the render function it would draw the buttons and draw the background. Another important part of the main loop is the ability to have a fixed update, which means a fixed time between updating. The number of times the fixed update is called per second is called the tick rate, and for example in Minecraft this is 20 ticks per second. So anyways, that is now the game state system completed. The next important part of games is a pseudo-random number generator, and it's called pseudo-random as it's not actually possible for computers to create a truly random number. Luckily, the C++ standard library already has random number functionality, but I just prefer to create abstractions around these functions simply for readability's sake. My abstractions for the C++11 random number generator can be seen in action right here, when I'm generating 25 random numbers between 0 and 100. So I guess that's part of the utilities out of the way. The next thing that I needed to do was some kind of resource management system. The idea behind this sort of thing is so that resources will only ever be loaded just once, where resources are things such as textures, sounds, and fonts. For example, take this picture of some random Mario game. You can probably see there's quite a lot of Goombas there. See, the idea behind the resource manager is all of these Goombas can share the same texture, rather than having to load their own texture for each instance of a Goomba. Not only does this save memory, but it also saves time, because basically loading from files is actually a rather slow thing to do. Furthermore, it also allows me to have a fail resource, just in case it tries to load a resource which doesn't actually exist. For example, if a texture fails to load, it will instead load a pink texture. Here is an example of loading up a texture successfully. Now let's see what happens if I change the name to something which is a file which doesn't actually exist. And when I load it now, it instead loads up a pink texture. So anyways, that's the resource manager done. Another very important part of any game engine or framework is an animation system. And well, this is needed to make games look a lot more alive and interesting. In SFML, this is really easy to implement because most drawable objects have this function called setTextureRect. This function basically allows you to specify a region of a texture to be used when a sprite is drawn. For example, take this Mega Man sprite sheet. If we want to make it look like the player is running, then you simply tell SFML the coordinates and the size of the frame of the animation as the player runs. Now, I'm not exactly a great artist, as you probably know already, so I just sort of made a bouncing ball animation to test if my animation system actually works. And here is my animation system in action. As you can see, I can also change how long it is between each frame of the animation, which allows me to either speed it up or slow it down. And so that's the animation system out of the way, and the last thing I need to do is some kind of GUI system. Now, creating a GUI system is probably my least favourite thing to do because I'm not really that good at it, but you know, it sort of has to be done. Anyways, to start off with, I created a class called Stack Menu to represent your classic game menu with the menu widgets in a sort of a column, for example the Minecraft main menu. Now one of the reasons I really do not like doing GUI systems is because it's sort of awkward to sort of position it all. Like for example the stack menu that I'm creating, I want all the buttons and widgets or whatever to be center aligned so they appear to be in the middle of the window. It's not exactly a difficult thing to do, but I just find it kind of awkward, but whatever. Now you probably heard me use the word widget, so basically a widget is a functional part of the menu, for example a button or a text box. The first widget type that I created was a button, which is simply a sprite which calls a function when it's clicked. So I set up a couple of test buttons here, button 1 and button 2, and as you can see when I click them it's printing something to the console window. I then added a text box, which of course is a little box which allows you to enter text. And yeah, that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge when it comes to graphical user interface implementations. And well, to be fair, I did say I wasn't very good at doing that sort of thing. So anyways, that is a very simple game framework thing that I'll be using in my later creating game videos. Obviously it's nothing too fancy or too featureful, but it's going to be extremely useful. I'd like to quickly say thank you to my super Patreon supporters, so thank you Stanley Morris, Synthetic, Timothy Gibbons and Alchemic. So anyways, once again thank you for watching and goodbye.